Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Gerry O'Reilly. That's a tough act to follow. If I didn't live in Florida already, I'd want to move, which I did 31 years ago when I came here. First thing I'll do is maybe give some regrets for our secretary, Kevin Thibault. Kevin would have liked to be in here today, but he was double booked. He's had another engagement speaking, so he couldn't be here today. I'm the local district secretary. State of Florida is 7 geographic regions for the Department of Transportation, decentralized. You're in District 4, which covers Broward, Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River County. So not the biggest geographically, and not quite the biggest by population, but from my perspective, the most important. So I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the transportation issues going on in the state of Florida and where we stand today and where we hope to be in the future a little bit. So transportation touches everything we do. I think most people tend to take it for granted. If you think about how you got here today, you use some form of transportation, whether you came in a car, maybe a plane in a car, maybe Uber, but you came in some form of transportation. And that's just us when we go places. If you had breakfast this morning, I had breakfast this morning, I ate a banana. So how did that banana get to my table? And if you trace the logistics and the chain of that banana, transportation is central to how it gets here. And just by way of example, that banana more than likely came from Costa Rica, somewhere in Central America, came on a boat into Port Everglades. Port Everglades imports most of the bananas for South Florida, probably from Orlando South. It would have been taken off a boat. It would have been put on a truck, driven on a truck to a ripening house. My one came from Publix, so one of Publix's ripening houses. Ripened there, went on a truck to a Publix store. I drove in a car, picked up that banana, brought it home in a car, and then ate it eventually this morning. And my point in saying all that is we take a lot for granted. The transportation systems we have, we need, that help us live in Florida, help us grow in Florida, and we just expect it to be there and expect it to all work well. And our job in the DOT is to try and make it as boring as possible so it does work well for you and work well for industry in the Florida as they grow and attempt to use our transportation system every day. We manage directly over 121,000 lane miles of roadway in Florida. So all the state roads, total mileage, 121,000 miles. We also manage all the infrastructure got to do with them, the bridges, the managed lanes that are around our state. We're kind of at a pivotal point now in how we, rethink how we manage transportation and how we move forward. There's a lot of things changing in transportation. I'll talk about a few of them, but you just think, I mentioned Uber earlier. Uber didn't exist in South Florida 5 years ago, but it's now widely used for people to get places. How should the system adapt to allow that to work properly and work more efficiently? We have to develop and deliver transportation infrastructure for now and for people in the future. So one of the key challenges for us is preparing for that future. I mentioned Uber. Think automated vehicles. What difference is that going to bring to our state? What difference is that going to bring to those trips I described earlier? Could a truck run down the road with no driver in it and just get from point A to point B successfully and then distribute goods? And it might be safer, it might be quicker, it might help keep the price at the price point it is today. So we have some of the best legislation in the country for promoting and allowing automated vehicles in our state. And that truck I talked about has run down Florida's turnpike on trial tests to see if it works, and it's worked successfully. So it's not coming to any of our roads anytime soon. But as you see that technology develop, be it for trucks, be it for cars, Florida wants to be at the forefront of that and see it happening. So I expect you will see that over time. Our population today, and you got great statistics from the previous speaker, around 21 million. When I moved to Florida, it was 12.6 or something. That was in 88. So we're not quite doubled, but it's not far off. We have a net increase of about 900 people a day. So they come, they have to get lots of things. They have to have a place to live, a job to work on, but they also have to get around and have a transportation system. And the more they come to our urban areas, the more congestion we see and the bigger effort we have to do to deal with that. We saw the figures for visitors, 126 million last year. The hope and desire is that that continues to grow. And I think the projection for 10 years from now is around 175 million visitors. So most states in the country don't have to deal with that. They don't have to size their networks and their infrastructure to deal with all those extra people. So it's a good thing for Florida. We always have to be thinking about that. The vision in the Department of Transportation, our focus is fairly simple. We want a well-planned network that supports economic growth and has the goal of being congestion and fatality-free. And it's important to set high goals, targets that we can reach. And some people would say fatality-free or congestion-free is a pipe dream. But it's not for the DOT. Everybody who works in our organization, the expectation is that they're doing everything in their power to improve safety on our transportation network. And we're not just focused on safety. It's obviously a big focus for a car, for a truck, and all those people you see on our roads. We're very much focused on the vulnerable road users too, on pedestrians, on cyclists. And if you happen to be in a car and a train is coming near you, you're the vulnerable road user. And railroad crossings and railroad infrastructure and safety at those, very focused on trying to improve in those areas. But that's our vision. How do we plan to get there and what are we doing? So improving safety is our number one goal. There's a continuous focus on safety, and under Secretary Thibault and our new governor, that focus has only increased. And that's a good thing. Enhanced mobility. So we want to improve mobility where we can. You'll see managed lane networks throughout the state in an attempt to try and allow people to get a trip that they can at least have a reliable time frame for a trip. For anybody that lives in South Florida, if you were to drive home this evening on I-95 in rush hour traffic, you would experience some congestion. However, you would reach a section where you could get on a managed lane and then probably get at least 50, 60 mile an hour trip. That will help us. It's not the solution. It's not a long-term solution, but it will help us with our mobility issues. We got to think about connectivity both locally and regionally throughout the state. How do we connect our different centers throughout the state with different transportation choices? It's more than just a car. We've got to think of the other modes that are out there and what our role is in encouraging other modes to exist and to develop, be they trains, buses, express bus networks. The DOT is deeply involved in those as well. When we opened our managed lanes in South Florida, we also opened an express bus network. So these aren't buses that people have to ride. These are buses that people make a choice to ride. And they would come from residential areas. We would typically start them in residential areas in the western part of Broward County. Big communities, a lot of homes. People would drive to a park and ride lot and then ride on that bus to downtown Miami and use the express lanes. So the value proposition for them is they pay a few dollars, probably less than they pay in gas. They park at the park and ride lot. They can use Wi-Fi. They can use the internet. They can relax and not have to deal with the traffic and then come home in the evening and have a short trip home. Even if people don't want to do that and they think, you're not getting me out of my car. For every 40 people or 50 people who would ride in that bus, it's 40 less in front of you on the roadway. So the more choices people have, the more modes we can have, the better chance there is we can deal with mobility in the future. In South Florida, we have a rail system, Tri-Rail, similar to South Florida, having Sunrail. And it doesn't have huge ridership compared to other parts of the country or big international areas in the world. But it probably carries around 16,000, 18,000 people a day. But to put that in perspective, in the peak hour, they carry about 1,600 people. Now, if all those people chose to drive a car instead, that's how many people we can fit in one lane of the interstate. So if it didn't exist, you'd need another lane on the interstate. And if you've driven in South Florida, you'd know that that's practically impossible without putting an awful lot of people out of business adjacent to these roads. So we're obviously not doing that. But encouraging more people, making it easier for them to ride these other modes, to utilize them, is a big part of our future as well in Florida. We have focused on finding better ways to do things and innovating for many years. But under our new governor, technology, innovation focus, and our secretary is a really big deal. We've set up different innovation teams around the state. Right now, you could go to a database in the DOT with ideas from people about how to improve things, from the simplest thing to complex things. There's hundreds, there's several thousand in there at the moment. And most of them already implemented, trying to find better ways to do things. Our future isn't to continue doing things the way we did them 40 years ago. It's to continue to evolve and make things better. We've got to find ways to adjust the way we've done things to speed up how we've built roads, to speed up how we work with the other partners, and build better quality products that last longer. We do a lot of innovation in materials that nobody would ever see, but contractors will have to be out on the road much less often if we can find better asphalts, better materials to put down on Florida roads because of our specific conditions. And we put a lot of money into innovative research. Technology is continuing to evolve in the whole country, and it's alive and well in the DOT as we try and find better and smarter ways to move forward. One of the ways you can eke out some more capacity off your road system is to manage them actively. So if you drive on the interstate in Florida, especially in an urban area, there's probably nowhere that you're not being looked at or seen. Your car isn't being seen by a camera. So if there's an incident or a crash, we can dispatch a road ranger, and there'll probably be one within 5 or 10 minutes of where your car is. They'll go there hopefully to make you safe and hopefully to get you, if you run out of gas, get you some gas at least to the next gas station. To respond to incidents, we'll have variable message signs that you'll see the current state of the roadways coming up. All this infrastructure helps. If we can move an incident off an interstate quickly, we just stop that traffic building up so people continue to move slowly. You're seeing that come onto regular urban arterial roads throughout the state as well. As we do more transportation system management and operations, you'll see more cameras, more signs, and more active response from the DOT. It takes a lot of work to do this, but we're trying to be evolutionary. So we're trying to evolve over time. We're not trying to be revolutionary. We've had a good system. It works well for the state, but we want to continue to change. We invest a lot of money in the state of Florida in our transportation systems. The governor just announced his bolder, brighter, and better future budget. Included in that was $9.9 billion in funding for the DOT. Our program of projects next year is $8.9 billion. It covers all the things you would expect with many billions of dollars: roads, adding new lanes, 53 new miles of new lanes in the state of Florida. But it also addresses other modes where we aren't necessarily the lead, but for transportation infrastructure, we're a big partner. We'll be investing $120 million in seaport infrastructure, $324 million in aviation improvements, $686 million in rail and transit programs. So it's not just roads and bridges, but it's all these other modes are invested in as well. It's worth noting that we're funded quite differently than any other state agency. We're not funded with general revenue. We're funded with gas tax. So it's really great that cars are becoming more fuel efficient, and it's really great that there's more electric vehicles on the road and that. But if you're being funded with gas tax, if it's an electric vehicle, they don't pay any gas tax. If our cars become 50% more efficient, they pay 50% less gas tax. So we're at a point here where this needs to be addressed nationally and in the state of Florida. we're going to have to start the conversation about what viable alternatives there are for the gas tax as we continue to grow. I think if you looked up stats now, you'd see somewhere in the region of 2% of the fleet in Florida, or in the United States, are electric or hybrid electric vehicles. That's expected to grow to 7% or so in the next several years. That'll make a big difference. You could read articles about Norway, where up to 50% of their fleet is electric. If we continue to just rely on the gas tax, that'll be a big problem for Florida delivering the infrastructure we need. So for us to be successful, a huge part is relationships and working with the different groups. It's not just the DOT, it's all these modal partners we deal with. It's our cities, our counties, and all the different agencies. And we're continuing to build and develop and work with them as we implement new solutions. So again, thank you for inviting me to be here, and good luck with the rest of your meeting. Thank you.